Broadcasting live. It's America's longest running talk show on computers. It's Computer America, bringing you the biggest names in technology with guest interviews, new products, and your emails. Listen live at computeramerica.com on any device around the world. Email the show at live@computeramerica.com or find us on social media. Be sure to check out our website for contests, giveaways, show notes, live video stream, podcasts, and more. You're listening to Computer America.
Hello and welcome into the Computer America Show. We are the nation's longest running, nationally syndicated radio talk show on computers and technology. Thank you for joining us, and I hope all of you are having a great day as we get things started here on the show. We have a very interesting guest that we're going to get to in just a moment, but they are the Divi Project, and if you haven't heard of them, well, hey, we have the best person possible to explain what they are, who they are, and, well, you know, everything about cryptocurrency. We have a great guest, and they'll be joining us in just a moment. But before we do that, a few things I need to mention, including computeramerica.com. That's where you'll find everything from the show notes. So in the show notes, you'll have things such as any articles we do, a link to our guest website, any videos that we showed, just anything and everything about today's show will be found on our homepage right there. Also, be sure to check out the social media contest, which will be, not ending, but we'll have another winner this Friday, and that is, of course, sponsored by Logitech. And then the last thing is, of course, the live video stream, where you can watch Computer America and not just listen. So just another way to experience the show. We are still primarily a radio show. So, but hey, just check it out if you have time, and it could be a new way to, check it out. So let's see. So all that, be sure to stick around for computer and technology news later on in the show if we have time, where we have a number of articles that we really talk about, including, one of the biggest ones of probably this year, if not the next couple of years, where the Supreme Court seemed open to talking about privacy in the digital age. And that would have, long-term ramifications on, privacy and what data companies are allowed to collect on you, build profiles on you, so on and so forth. So we're going to talk about the implications of the Supreme Court, settling that, and many others that you should definitely check out. But like I said, our first segment of the show is dedicated entirely to our guest, and they are once again the Divi Project. You can check them out at diviproject.org. Divi spelled D-I-V-I. And joining us today is none other than the CEO and co-founder of the company, Mr. Geoff McCabe. So, Geoff, thank you for joining us here on Computer America.
Hi, Ben. Thanks for having me. It's very exciting. It's actually the first time I think that I've been on the radio, so I've been looking forward to this.
Yeah, this is going to be fun. And, best way to come on the radio is going to be something that you are obviously passionate about and something that you know a lot about. And cryptocurrency has certainly earned its place as a topic of conversation on traditional media, radio, and the internet in general. So tell, for all of our listeners who may be new to cryptocurrency or definitely new to the Divi Project, give us an overview of, kind of what made you get started in cryptocurrency and how that led to the Divi Project.
Well, I've been basically a geek my whole life. I learned computer program. Yeah, I learned computer programming years and years ago on like a pet computer, even before Apple and VIC-20 and all of that. And I became a physicist later on. I went from physics, though, into being a businessman, and I did various businesses that were not really related to technology, but tech was always dear to my heart. And so when cryptocurrencies came along, I thought, this is really my chance. I can get a group of people together and we could make our own. And so that's what we decided to do.
Very, very cool. And the idea of making your own, I think that part is one that I think strikes people a little funny because, when you talk about cryptocurrency, this is obviously depending on who you talk to, it's a way of augmenting, money as we know it for a digital age. In some people's minds, it's the eventual destination of currency in society as we know it, depending on how broad people want to think in terms. But the idea that any individual can start their own currency or start their own fork of a cryptocurrency. That's new. So what made you say that this was our chance? Starting a fork was the best thing for us to do.
Well, in this case, we basically, you can see that it's kind of appealing, the idea. It's almost like a treasure hunt, where you can go and dig up money, right? That's sort of what appeals to
Mm-hmm.
Bitcoin early on. People get gold fever, and people have certainly got Bitcoin fever and cryptocurrency fever as well. Besides the fact that, it's a world-changing technology, there's also the financial aspect. And so when, a lot of people have been making their own cryptocurrencies, a lot of them have just failed because they don't really have a good idea. And I thought I had a really good idea. Along with my other four co-founders, we basically sat down and said, what does the market really need? And rather than thinking of it from a geek point of view and thinking about technology, really thought about it from a more of a business point of view. And when you are starting a new business, you often are trying to solve a problem. In our case, we saw a real obvious problem, which is that cryptocurrencies as they are now are almost painful to use. And people react people that have not ever tried Bitcoin or cryptocurrencies before, when I show them how it works, I mean, they get angry actually sometimes at how complicated. And it should. Everybody that loves cryptocurrencies has had this reaction, showing this to friends, and people kind of think you're crazy to be so interested in this because it's just so difficult. And it makes sense that it's difficult because cryptocurrencies come from cryptographers who deal in puzzles. And so basically, the entire cryptocurrency and Bitcoin space is based on puzzles. And the user interfaces are basically a puzzle too. So when you open up your wallet to look in your coins, you basically have to solve a puzzle. And for the type of people that are in this space, that's kind of fun. But for average people, you don't want to have to solve a puzzle, especially when you're worried about your money getting stolen or making a mistake and losing everything. You want things to be as easy as possible. And so that's what we decided would be the best route. We said, nobody's done this before. It seems really obvious that, wow, if somebody made a cryptocurrency that was really easy to use, the way PayPal or internet banking is easy to use, that would be something that's really popular, and it would solve an obvious problem.
Right.
And when you create a cryptocurrency, you're basically trying to compete with hundreds or even over 1,000 of them. To be able to stand out, you need people to be attracted to yours. You can't just go and make advertisements and hope that people are going to start using it. People have to genuinely want to use it and be interested. And so coming up with a novel idea that appeals to the 99% of the people who are not geeks that are into the cryptography aspect of cryptocurrencies was kind of a no-brainer for us. And so that's what we did. We really sat down and made lists of all the things that everybody hates about cryptocurrencies, and we tried to find solutions to all of them and put them all into one new idea.
So tell us why. And you mentioned Bitcoin a couple times. I think for most people, they associate cryptocurrency, like cryptocurrency is Bitcoin, and Bitcoin is kind of synonymous with cryptocurrency. But what we've obviously been finding out, especially what we're gonna find out with this interview, that cryptocurrency can be anything. Bitcoin is one of the first and most popular and most expensive, but cryptocurrency takes many forms and many names. And yours, the Divi coin, as I believe it's called, and you're trying to solve this problem of user pain points. So I guess my question is Bitcoin, it's, I think, as grounded and as foundational as any cryptocurrency can currently be. I mean, it did just kind of lose 20% of its price, but even that huge swing in the price of a Bitcoin, it's still multi thousands of dollars, expensive. So my question to you is, when something is as founded and grounded as Bitcoin, why couldn't Bitcoin just change to adapt to what you're doing? Like, why couldn't Bitcoin change their user interface to be
Well,
more
that's a
like
good
Divi?
question. So you're basically speaking to the idea of competition and all that. Bitcoin, people have almost decided at this point that it's never really going to be a cryptocurrency. It was started with that idea by Satoshi Nakamoto and his friends. And it's really moved away from that, and it's become what they call a store of value. So it's kind of like digital gold, and that people are investing in it to basically just stick money in and hope that it goes up over time in the same way they do with gold. And there's very reason it's a pretty reasonable prospect actually, because it's very well protected from hackers. It's never been hacked. Um, and believe me, every hacker in the universe has tried to hack it to put a feather in their cap, right? That would make them famous. So it's very safe in that regard. And the value has routinely just gone up year after year after year. And so at this point, it seems a very safe bet as a store of value. It doesn't work as a cryptocurrency, though, because it's too slow. And, it takes 15, 20 minutes, sometimes even longer to do a transaction. So if you're trying to buy a hamburger or a pair of shoes, you don't want to wait that long. It's also too expensive. It can be $2, and who knows how much it might be. The miners then get to decide how much they're going to charge basically for a transaction. And if you're, it's okay if you're buying a car, you don't mind paying $2, but when you're buying more inexpensive things, Bitcoin just doesn't work. And of course, there's a lot of other options that are cryptocurrencies, and not all cryptos are cryptocurrencies. So, for example, there's Ethereum, which is based on smart contracts, and people aren't using that so much as a currency either. So there's a lot of different blockchains that are trying to solve different problems. The currency space is basically um, crypto is more like Dash or going after that, and so that's one that works faster, and they have a sort of a program similar to what we're doing, but they're rolling it out over 3 years. It's going to take a long time because it's much harder to take an old blockchain and add a whole bunch of new technology to it than it is to start fresh like we're doing and solve all the problems um, from the get-go, basically.
Right.
So when we launch, which will be in March or April, we'll already have all of those problems solved, and it will take Dash 2 years just to catch up with us. I mean, in some ways, they're already, they're a multi-billion-dollar valued coin and a lot more famous. But as far as the masses of people, if you ask people on the street, nobody knows about Dash. So it's just in the crypto world. So we're not really competing with Dash. In the future, basically all types of cryptocurrencies will be able to be used pretty much interchangeably. So a lot of people ask me, well, are you competing with Dash? Are you competing with Bitcoin? Are you competing with Ethereum? Who are you competing with? And my answer is that it's not really going to work that way because there's a technology coming called atomic swaps. And what that will allow you to do is that if you want to pay in Divi, but somebody else wants to receive in Bitcoin or Dash, then you can do your transfer, and the money that you're sending will go to a distributed, decentralized exchange and change to the one that they want to receive. And they'll receive what you send. You basically spend what you want. They receive what they want. And someone else you don't even know is the changing person. And so, but what that means is that all cryptocurrencies will be able to coexist peacefully with each other. And that's really good for us because if all cryptocurrencies can be used, we think people will choose the ones that are the easiest to use. So for us, that's a very exciting possibility that when atomic swaps are becoming ubiquitous.
That is certainly good to hear because, on the show here, we've had other cryptocurrency companies here on the show. I think the most recent one was more of a niche currency. It was the idea that, you're trying to make a currency that is going to be for anyone, for anything, and make it simple and easy to use that I assume that even your grandparents can use. Whereas this company that came on, a couple months ago, they had a currency that they strictly wanted to use for video games, trading of skins and buying currencies and things like that. Like they wanted to aim it at the gaming market. And so it's good to hear that, if a gamer meets an investor and they want to trade some kind of currency, they're not going to be locked away from each other in different ecosystems. So you're saying that problem is currently being solved where, yes, there's that, hundreds or thousands of cryptocurrencies. That doesn't mean that there's hundreds of thousands of markets you need to pay attention to. It's just how they all relate to one another.
Right, exactly. So that's a problem. There's certain problems that Divi can solve, and there's a lot of other problems that have to be solved by the entire cryptocurrency space. Like, for example, probably the most difficult one right now is how do you get into cryptocurrency in the first place? So how, people always ask me that don't know anything about this. They say, "Oh, well, how do I want to get Bitcoin? How do I do it?" And there's very few ways actually to really do that. Once you're in and you have Bitcoin, there's many different ways to trade and change it to other cryptocurrencies. And once you understand how they all work, it's pretty painless. But it takes quite a long way to get there. And for
Right.
most people, they don't want to go. They don't want to go through all that process. It's just not for them.
So, talk to us about mass adoption. You said that your coin will be launching here in the next couple of months, but how do you plan on really getting people to, and I'm assuming that you are not going for people who are already invested in Bitcoin. You're not going for people who are already invested in other cryptocurrencies. You're going for the other 99%, as you said earlier, who are, maybe interested or even not interested, but are finding uses, or there will be uses here in the near future for cryptocurrency. What is your plan to get into those people's, I assume, phones or computers or browsers or just minds? How do you plan to
Well,
reach them?
well, actually, the mass adoption will be a slow process. It'll start. It's starting now. Bitcoin's in the news every day, but people don't understand how it relates to them. Um, but it'll basically take 3 to 5 years before, half of the people in the United States are using cryptocurrency in one way or another. And so before that time, we have more of a short-term plan, which is more geared towards the crypto world and people that tend to be more geeks. And we have what's called a master node system. And we've devised a new type that has multiple levels. And basically, what you do is when you buy our coin, in the beginning, there's not a lot of places to spend it, and so people are much more interested in sort of the investment and accumulation aspect of cryptocurrencies. And for Bitcoiners, that can mean mining, or you buy Bitcoin and you loan it out, and somebody else generates more Bitcoins for you based on that loan. With our system, though, instead of mining, you have what's called staking and a master node. Basically, your computer acts as a node in the network and communicates with all of the other nodes all over the world, and they form the network and keep the blockchain up to date and adding new transactions to that blockchain all the time. And it doesn't, unlike Bitcoin, which now, Bitcoin uses more power than the country of Nigeria.
Yeah.
It's incredibly bad for the environment and getting worse every year. Um, Ours doesn't use that kind of mining system. It's a proof of stake rather than proof of work, which means basically you just have to prove to the system that you have a stake in it by having a certain number of coins, and you basically lock them away in a wallet that's attached to your node, and that allows you to win the right to add new blocks to the blockchain every minute. There's another one, and so you basically get paid to maintain the network. And this was invented, I think, originally by Dash, and we're doing something different in that we're adding 5 levels to it. So, for instance, you can stake with 1,000 coins, and we call that copper. 3,000 coins is silver. 10,000 coins is gold. 30,000 coins is platinum, and 100,000 coins is diamond. And so people ask me, well, what's the whole point of this? And the fact is that cryptocurrency is really a game to a lot of people right now. It's a way of sort of playing a game and making money from it. That the whole trading aspect is very game. So we decided to gamify the master node system in a way that nobody had done before. So basically, for instance, if you have 1,000 coins, you can put them in a copper node, or if you have 3,000, instead of having 3 copper nodes, you can have a silver, which would be better than it'll be 5% better than having 3 copper. And so it encourages people to basically collect more coins, hoard them, create more into any whatever way you can, and move up the level. And so we've already found, even before the whole node system is in place, just during the ICO phase, people are already, they put in a few $1,000s and they're already thinking in terms of what node they have. And then they realize, wow, if I only got a little bit more, I could actually get to the next level. people start bragging about the level they
So
have, and
yeah,
they're
and
excited.
so if you could
Yeah,
explain just a little bit more, because again, if you're watching the video portion, we have your website up, and yep, copper, silver, gold, platinum, diamond, and
yeah.
20%. If you could clarify, what these 3, 5, 10, 20% means, because like, is this you're more efficient, in getting a new piece of the blockchain, or like, what
Yes.
is the true benefit of this percentage?
Yeah, that's right. So every 60 seconds a new block is made, and somebody, it's like sort of like winning a lottery. Somebody who has a node is going to win the right to create that block and add it to the chain. So that percentage basically reflects an extra bonus chance to win it. It doesn't give you more coins, it just gives you a better chance to win the block. So yeah, so if you have a diamond, basically a diamond node is 100,000, so it's basically like having 100 copper nodes, but it's 20% better as far as it would be 20% better than having 100 copper nodes.
Right.
So
So
yeah, and it also
and I'm sorry to cut you off there, but just real quick, because this was a problem that that Bitcoin ran into when it was first starting to get going. And of course, there's the story of the pizza. I think it was like 10,000 Bitcoin for 2 pizzas. And other companies such as Overstock and Amazon, but Tesla, like other companies were starting to accept Bitcoin for physical goods, and that's all well and good. But at the end, at the end of the day, they were, and I don't mean that figuratively. Figuratively, I mean that like literally 5 o'clock in the afternoon. At the end of the day of business, they would, empty out all their Bitcoin. They would not store Bitcoin. They would accept it and then immediately trade it for the market value in U.S. dollars. So, these companies, they were doing business in Bitcoin, but essentially they were just using it as the middleman for, US currency. So, I guess my question to you is that, this idea of collecting, holding, and then getting better chances, essentially you have gamified this. Are you hoping that people are going to, look to not just collect this just because it's a currency, but also hold on to it because it's going to be more valuable to hold on to than it is to immediately offload?
right. So well, basically, if you tell people that mass adoption is going to take 3 to 5 years, they're not that interested in holding your cryptocurrency for a long time. And if people aren't holding it, they're selling it. And so it's hard for the value to change in the way you might want it to.
Right.
But when you have a system where everybody's holding it, it tends to bring in more people. If people are excited about it, they're talking about it. It brings more people into the ecosystem, and so it's basically it's creating natural growth because people are holding rather than trading and selling. So, and if going back to the idea of
Sure.
you mentioned about Amazon and those, I mean, basically all of those companies are, for them it's free publicity. They can announce that they're going to start taking Bitcoin, then they get in the news. It's like free advertising, right? They're just basically doing it as a gimmick. And also, if you're the first in a market space to accept Bitcoin, then you're the one that's going to gain the sales from the Bitcoin holders. So it kind of has two things, but it's for the most part it's just a gimmick right now. In our case, it's actually different. I mean, Bitcoin is painful for people to use, and so the reason you don't see mass adoption now is because the people in tech and these big tech companies, they all are relying on millions and millions and millions of people really enjoying the process of interacting with their company. So they don't really want to touch Bitcoin with a 10-foot pole because it immediately is going to cause people to be angry at them, lots of customer service calls, and all this kind of stuff. So we're trying to solve that problem as far as the business to consumer part, and that we will take, as soon as we have our demo, we'll take it to a lot of these big companies, and we expect them to say, well, that's a cryptocurrency. We don't want anything to do with that. We've already tried Bitcoin. It's a nightmare. This kind of thing. But then when we show them what we have, we expect people to say, wow, I wouldn't use Bitcoin, but I will use Divi because my clients will like this. So, and they can also save money because they don't have to pay the credit card fees. The fees on Divi will be less than a penny per transaction, and they happen very quickly. So it's designed to be a currency, not a store of value, although all cryptos can be a store of value. But it can be both, but it can't.
Right.
It can't. It's easy for something to be a store of value without being a cryptocurrency.
Right.
So ours can be both.
So let's talk about what the core features that you are introducing with this project that are truly going to overcome the problems with cryptocurrency. And you can add to or take away any of these. I'm about to ramble off, but from what we've seen here at Computer America with cryptocurrency, the biggest problem is knowledge. Educating people. We try to do it on a regular basis here on the show because hey, we find it interesting. But educating people about the role of cryptocurrency, that's one problem. Ease of use, like you've mentioned, and I think you mentioned yourself. Make it as easy as PayPal. Make it something that is super intuitive because not everyone is a puzzle solver, and what is intuitive to one person would not be intuitive to many, many others. And then I think the third one would be to actually, get people to, use it. Actually, finding a place, a niche in people's lives that this is going to be a viable alternate to cash or PayPal or anything else. So those are my top three things. What are you planning on tackling, and how do you tackle these things with the Divi project?
Well, people often ask what ease of use means, and it's really not that hard. All you have to do is open up any Bitcoin wallet, and as soon as you get mad, then you know there's a problem that needs to be solved. For example, the way that wallet addresses are used, it might be something like for Ethereum, it would be 0xC1F9CA42. You can never remember this. And it's very easy to, when you cut and paste it, leave off a number. Or one of the people that actually bought Divi, he told me the reason that he did was because he accidentally lost $10,000 just transferring Bitcoin to his Ethereum wallet by accident. So he wasn't even sending it to somebody else. He was sending it to himself. When he did a copy and paste, somehow it didn't take. I mean, how many times have you, when you did a copy and then you pasted, it didn't copy what you thought, but it copied the last thing
yeah,
that you did. It happens all the time.
Just basic
and because you don't,
web addresses and stuff like that. And again,
yeah.
speaking to yesterday, we had a cybersecurity correspondent on, and we were talking about that instance a couple of months ago that it was a virus. It was a Trojan that went around and took anything that looked like a Bitcoin wallet code, and it would replace it with someone else's. So like you couldn't identify it. You couldn't like, even if it's your Bitcoin wallet code, you couldn't identify your own code.
Yeah, exactly. So in this case, he put in his Ethereum address because he had just done an Ethereum transfer into his Bitcoin transfer, or maybe it was the reverse of that, and he sent $10,000 to himself, and he lost it all, and he never got it back. And so, of course, and he lost even more because then he stopped buying Bitcoin and Ethereum, and it went up like 100 times since then. So he would have been rich, He didn't just lose $10,000; he lost millions, because he got out of it. And that's kind of that one little episode is kind of a microcosm of the whole experience of this, and that people are afraid to be involved with this because it's just too easy to make a mistake. People often ask me like, well, security is about hackers, right? And hackers are one thing, but you're like 100 times more likely to do something stupid to yourself, And it's not even stupid; it's just normal behavior. If you make a normal, mistake that everybody makes every day with cryptocurrencies, you can lose your money, and it shouldn't be that way. And I just see it all the time. I mean, through this whole process, we've really learned, and we just can't wait to have our own Divi. And in many ways, we designed Divi to be the cryptocurrency we all wanted, And so it was, from that point of view, it was sort of easy. And I'm sure it's one of these things that years from now, everybody's going to say, "Wow, that was, why didn't somebody do that before? Why isn't it's it seems so obvious." And part of the reason for why it hasn't been done before is because Bitcoin cannot do what we're going to do. And the reason is because we have a different blockchain. Our blockchain has information associated with each wallet address that relates to the user. For instance, it can have an email, it can have a name. So instead of basically sending a transfer to a wallet address with this long string of numbers, you can send it to someone's email address or someone's name, something that you recognize.
Makes a
And
lot of sense.
it pulls. Yeah,
And I'm sorry to cut you off there for just a moment, but
yeah.
the music means we're going to take a break. And I know the half hour just sped on by. Everyone will be right back with Mr. Geoff McCabe. He is the co-founder and CEO of the Divi Project. We'll be right back. We'll be talking more about Divi Coin and how to use it. Computer America. We'll be right back.
We are all Brother Wolf. 10 years ago, a group of locals banded together to create positive change. We took animals into our homes, held adoption events at local retailers, and talked to the community about our mission to help build a no-kill Asheville. A decade later, we have achieved so many victories for animals in need. There's been so much progress, yet there's still so much to do. As part of our year-long celebration, we encourage you to become a member of our special Compassionate Circle program. With a monthly donation of $10 or more, you will have behind-the-scenes access to the work we are doing at Brother Wolf. Our goal is to reach 1,000 members because we receive no government funding. Working together, we can help build and sustain no-kill communities. Learn more at compassionatecircle.bwar.org. We are a 501c3 tax-deductible organization.
And welcome back to the Computer America Show. It is 31 minutes past the hour, and folks, if you're just joining us, I'm your host, Ben Crossman, and we have been talking to Mr. Geoff McCabe. He is the co-founder and CEO of the Divi Project, and if you missed any part of today's show, check it out. You can, of course, hear it on our website, computeramerica.com, or we have the podcast version of the show, which is just the show in its entirety, available through Google Play, iHeartRadio, iTunes, of course, SoundCloud, blah, blah, blah. Many, many places to hear it, and check that out. But in the meantime, we continue on with our conversation with Geoff. And Geoff, again, I apologize for cutting you off there, but you were talking about how, one way that you differ from many other wallets out there for cryptocurrencies is that you actually put personal identifiers that we all use every day, be it name, email address, what have you, and that's the way that you identify senders and recipients. Oh, Geoff, are you there? All right, so Geoff might have stepped away just for a moment, but hey, in the meantime, everyone, again, you can check out everything that we're talking about here today over at thediviproject.org. You can check that out. And Geoff, are you there?
Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you now. There we go.
Okay.
So, and I'm hoping that you heard everything I just said, but please
yes.
Continue on with what you were saying.
Right. So basically, we still have those long, unintelligible wallet address, but we hide those so people don't see them. We basically can, you can use it if you want, but you can also associate that with a name, like your own name or your business name that you purchase, like a web address, and you basically pay a little bit of money every year to continue to have that. And those funds go into the treasury that basically gets used to improve the coin and to pay the people that continue to work on it, or perhaps to do marketing. And that's something interesting that Bitcoin doesn't have, right? With Bitcoin, the money goes to miners, and the miners don't necessarily do anything to improve the coin. They just write the transactions. So in our case, we have what's called a governance system that also was started by Dash, but ours is much more advanced in that the people who own the coin and have the master nodes, the master nodes actually get to vote on what to do with Divi itself. So basically, a lot of things that are sort of not variable in blockchains, we're making them into variables so that people who own the coin can make decisions about what basically changes need to be made without actually recoding being done. And that's something that's, I think, revolutionary in that this, what's called a governance system, is very internalized. So unlike Bitcoin, where they have these giant public fights between different groups trying to control it, they end up in splits. It's worked for Bitcoin because it generates a lot of free publicity, but eventually people are going to get really tired of all this drama because it's unstable. And you really want something for a currency, you want it to be more stable. You want something that you can rely on, right? And so we have a way of basically changing, actually changing the blockchain itself through the owners, and anybody can participate, right? So anybody in the world, no matter who you are, you can get some Divi and you can set up a master node and you can be part of the voting process. And that's something that's really quite interesting.
So you have, and you know, what you say is a problem. A lot of people saw it as revolutionary and something that they really liked was the idea of a truly decentralized coin, where you know you mentioned Satoshi Sakamoto. You know, I completely forget his name, but
Yeah.
essentially he was a he was a mass figure. He did not come out in public. He just introduced it and said this was my username. No one really knew who he was, and people latched onto the idea that no one truly had ultimate say over Bitcoin. And that was what made it attractive to some people because no one person, no one agency, no one country could dictate what happened. It was instead we the people. You're saying that for your project and for your currency, a more hands-on approach is going to be much more beneficial because you're going to, you know, are you anticipating things are going to be changing that you need to be more agile than Bitcoin, or are you anticipating that the users are going to start using it for something else and you need to adapt to what the users want?
Right, exactly. I mean, you can technology is changing so quickly. Artificial intelligence is going to be affecting everything. And something like Bitcoin, you know, you hear people talk about how, oh, you know, this will be all mined out in 120 years. But, you know, that always makes me laugh because, you know, in the 20 years, there's going to be robots walking around that are smarter than we are. Maybe not 20 years, but 30 or 40 years, there will be. And so thinking 120 years is kind of, you know, it just doesn't really matter anymore. And there'll be, I can imagine Bitcoin will be around in 120 years. But what will happen is that there's going to be a lot of unforeseen changes in everything because of technology. And so we're trying to sort of build in a way for the owners of the coin to collectively discuss and make decisions about what's best. So, for example, there was recently this SegWit 2x fork that they were going to do with Bitcoin, and all it really was they wanted to double the block size so they could fit twice as much information in a block. And they fought and they fought for years over this, and then right before it was supposed to happen, they decided not to do it. A whole bunch of people pulled out. They didn't participate, and it's just this constant drama, right? So in our case, rather than having to recode and risk a fork, the people will be able to basically vote within the blockchain based on what they think is better, and whoever wins, it will automatically go that way.
Mm.
So you don't have to then just have everybody download a bunch of software. The
So it's
software will
not,
all
yeah.
sort of fix itself.
So it's not you and your co-founders sitting in a room and telling, you know, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of people, you know, how this is going to work. It's instead the community deciding what's best for the community.
Exactly. So the founders of this, you know, it's very much like a living creature. You know, we once we breathe life into this blockchain and set it free, we're no longer in control of it. We're only in control of it in so much as the master node holders of Divi decide to vote to continue it, to allow us to make decisions for them. And if they don't like what we're doing, then they can put somebody else in. And so it basically it's very a democratic process. Now, what's really I find really interesting about this democratic process is that although this has been done before with other coins, like with Dash, in order to set up a master node, you basically have to be a super geek. I mean, it takes 4 or 5 hours of hardcore programming and setting. It's extremely difficult. So it's not really a democracy; it's a technocracy. You have to be really good at programming to set up a master node, and if anything goes wrong, you don't know how to fix it. So with ours, we're doing what we call a one-click install. So we're going to make it really easy so that anybody can can click a button and set up their master node either on their home computer or in the cloud, like on Amazon's cloud service. And what that does is it allows a different type of group of people to be in charge of the coin. Instead of only geeks who are very smart people, but they have a limited worldview because they're all very similar. Our The controllers of our coin will be all types of people. People that are we'll have the geeks, of course, but we'll also have people that are good at marketing, people that are good at business, and we think that that broad uh, coalition of life experiences mixed together, making decisions, will make for a much stronger um, and more competitive coin overall.
I got you. I got you. So yeah, in uh, so you have this, and it's it seems like you. I'm going through your website, and I'm thinking back to something you said earlier about this idea, and I'm sorry for deviating a bit, but you mentioned that Bitcoin, the reason it's not good for transactions and these everyday things, was this idea of a proof of work instead of a proof of stake. And I've always had Bitcoin explained to me that you solve these long mathematical problems that only a computer can do, and they're very cumbersome. They're very inane. In they're not really solving anything. It's just proving that your computer is putting in the effort to add to the blockchain, and that works well and all. But like you said, it slows down the entire transaction process. So my question to you was, proof of stake. This is what you're doing. Why is this better? And are there any inherent flaws in this that maybe proof of work, kind of solves that you're going out on a limb and trying to avoid?
Well, sometimes people say this kind of thing, but that there's, proof of stake, it hasn't been proven, this kind of thing. But, Dash has been around a while and it hasn't been hacked yet. And and I'm sure there's a lot of people that have tried. So I think those, in my opinion, those problems have already been solved and improved on over a few years. And so I'm not worried about that aspect. But I live in Costa Rica. I'm an environmentalist. I actually live in an eco village in an organic farm, and this idea of just burning massive quantities of carbon basically to fuel Bitcoin is something that really doesn't sit well with me. So when we decided to do a, a our own cryptocurrency, we immediately said, oh, this has to be proof of stake.
Right.
Proof of work. I understand why it was created. Satoshi was an absolute genius. It made sense back then when it was small numbers and it was 50,000 coins for a pizza. But now that's technology that's really not good for the planet. And they have no. That's. I mean, if they can't decide whether they're going to double the blockchain or the block size, how are they ever going to switch to proof of stake? Now, Ethereum is switching to proof of stake, but it's taking them a very long time to get there. And because it's, like I said with Dash earlier, it's very hard to change an existing blockchain and ecosystem once it's set in motion. So with us, we get to take sort of pick and choose all the very best technologies and put them all in our blockchain from the get-go. And because of our type of governance system, we can add a lot of flexibility so that no matter what the future throws at us, we'll be able to much more easily basically change how our blockchain functions to deal with future challenges, and that's something that is pretty revolutionary.
Right. So, and initial coin offerings, they're kind of like public offerings for companies that hit the stock market, and it's a way that companies, or at least coin projects and things like this, that they get their coin out there, and they aren't just immediately bought out by one individual and the whole thing is capitalized and the whole thing falls apart. You don't want that. So I know that they can be shaky. They can go very well. They can start off slow. Tell us about the initial coin offering for Divi. How'd that go?
Well, it's interesting. We tried to we put our maximum cap at 100,000 Ethereum, and we only ended up raising 7,000, which is only 7% of our max. We needed 5,000 to be able to complete the project, or at least that was sort of the minimum. So we made that, and so in some ways we felt, oh, especially at first we thought, oh, we're doing terribly. But then when we looked on the ICO scanner to look at how everybody else is doing, we realized we weren't doing so badly. We're at number 7 out of 140, 150 of them. We were at number 7, and we remained in the top 10 throughout the entire time we were doing it. So people were very excited. What people weren't so excited about was just ICOs in general. There was all this focus on Bitcoin splits. Ethereum was going to split also, and the whole market kind of moved away from ICOs. What happened was that there were a few really big ICOs that were where everybody got all excited about it, all this hype, and they earned $120 million,
I heard about that.
$200
Yeah.
million. Yeah, and so then they go on the exchange and immediately they drop in half. All these people got these, sweet bonuses early on. Were just trying to sell and double their money overnight, basically. And so I think the whole market really soured on ICOs to some extent. And so we kind of fell victim to being in a really good idea in at the wrong time. And so luckily we raised enough and we developed an extremely loyal fan base, and we picked up an incredible array of advisors. You don't see them on our website or our white paper, but they're people that have invested in us. These are people that are engineers from MIT. They have MBAs. They work at Amazon. They work at different places, and they love us as people, and they believe in us, and they love the idea, and they think it's going somewhere. So we've been getting this great advice from people that are really connected in the whole crypto space. And one of the things that you'll notice, like if you go and look at how, we just finished this ICO and now we're on an exchange called Cryptopia where people are buying and selling it. It's really hard to buy it because people don't want to sell it. And our advisors told us this is a really good sign. Basically, normally an ICO in our kind of state would find that 25 to 35% of the coins would end up on exchanges um, where people are basically trying to sell them. That drives the price down, but it also just doesn't really show a lot of loyalty to the coin. I just calculated based just before the show started that it was I think it was less than 2% of our coins were basically on for sale right now on the exchange, which they basically said that that's like almost unheard of as far as such a tiny amount. What that means is that people are extremely enthusiastic. The few people that do know about us um, are extremely enthusiastic about our future, and they don't want to sell them for basically for any price. And so that's a really good sign for us, and that's going to help us achieve mass adoption. Because when people are basically raving fans for a product of any kind, they tell everybody about it, and so that's free
But
advertising.
just to be yeah, and just to be clear though, that doesn't affect your mission to be a viable currency. Yeah, and again, not not something that can kind of like Bitcoin just be there, but to actually do these transactions, you're never going to run into a point where people are holding on to these to get that level up, that diamond that diamond tier. You're not intentionally slowing down your service just so people hold on to your coin, are you?
Right. Well, it's basically that if that happens where too many people don't want to sell it, then by the laws of price and demand, the price will change. Eventually, it will find a balance where there are people that want to sell,
Okay.
and so you do have enough. You do need to have enough liquidity, and so it's one of the things we've actually been discussing with some of our advisors is how to make sure there's enough liquidity once you're talking about thousands of transactions happening. You need to make sure that there's enough coins being able to be bought and sold, that the price stays relatively stable, and that's just a matter of the market really finding the right balance. Now, in our system, there's constantly new coins being created, and so over time, enough new coins will be created that can be added to the liquidity. And so one of the options we can do is using the governance system. If we find there's not enough liquidity to create the right balance,
Mm-hmm.
we can shift that to create perhaps a liquidity pool where basically the blockchain itself has its own pool of coins that it can buy and sell as needed to make sure that it has enough price stability. And so that's one of the things we're looking into. And as we get farther and farther into the development, we have to get into the sort of the game theory and find people who are experts in this to run different simulations to see what happens in extreme cases, if nobody's buying or if everybody's selling or this kind of thing. If something goes on sale and everybody wants to buy it, then all of a sudden there may be a problem and then people can't get what they need. So we have to kind of run through all these um, potential problems and make sure we have a solution for them.
I gotcha. And one problem that again, just to bring up Bitcoin because it's Bitcoin, but Over the past 24 hours, Bitcoin lost 20% of its value. We saw $2,000, something like that, wiped off of every single Bitcoin. I've been watching yours on Cryptopia. I mean, it's gone from like a 12% change to a 2% change to an 18% change. Like, it's volatility is certainly part of cryptocurrency. There's no doubt about it. Do you see volatility as something that would make people concerned? Because I think, especially with a website like this, it looks like a stock ticker. There's no two ways about it. And if you saw a stock that was, down 30%, oh my God, there'd be panic in the streets. There'd be riots. Whereas cryptocurrency,
Right.
it may just be another day, 2 days later, you're up, 300%. And that's just the way cryptocurrency goes. Do you see volatility as something that needs to be reined in, or is that just part of
Definitely.
currency? Go ahead.
Yeah, definitely. And one of the things that our coders will do is that we'll be creating tools for merchants, so we can handle volatility by pegging a price to the US dollar or whatever their local currency is. And it's going to take a while for there to be mass adoption, right? So until that point, people will be able to, for example, set a price of, say, $10 for their product, and the price in Divi that's explained that is shown on their website will be updated constantly based on the exchange rate. And so they don't have to worry that they are trying to sell a product for 5 Divi, and then a week later they've just lost money because the price has changed, right? Because it'll automatically update. Now, once it grows big enough, and there's enough people in it, and the liquidity is there, as we get more to be the way Dash and Bitcoin are, then all of those ups and downs can kind of level out, to some extent. Now, as long as you have it, if you're able to dynamically peg it to something, you can make sure that the business people aren't losing money. So
Right.
that's always going to be a solution.
Right, absolutely. So, and with that being said, talk to us about the future, because you seem, no offense, you seem very into cryptocurrency, and that's certainly a good thing. And I've been watching the news just because, hey, we do news here on the show, and I've luckily, and I say this by all means, I remember seeing Bitcoin crash, and everyone thought it was dead when it was down to like $80 a Bitcoin, and then it was like $1,000, crashed back down to 300, and everyone said it was dead. And a year later, hey, it's up to $10,000. Like, I've never bought into cryptocurrency, but I have been watching it closely. And as someone who watches it closely, who has no skin in the game, I can honestly say I don't know where the heck Bitcoin is going. I don't know where the heck cryptocurrency in the next 5 years is going. Again, because I have no money in this, I'm not going to say, oh, it's a guaranteed win, and invest now so I make more money, or any other vice versa way. You yourself, where do you see cryptocurrency going in the next 5 years, and how do you see cryptocurrency, just kind of changing society in the next 5 years?
Well, that's so many things are going to be changing, in this world because of technology. I mean, right now things haven't changed that much, but in 10 years there's going to be, cars will be driving themselves. There's
Mm-hmm.
going to be a lot more robotics. A lot of people are going to be losing their jobs and looking for new ones, and that's one of the things that we're actually focused on, is trying to find a way for people to be able to use Divi by having our own marketplace system that's built into our smart wallet. So we think that people in the future will not just work one job. They'll probably work many jobs, and everybody will be doing what they call a gig economy, a lot more freelancing and this kind of thing. And so people will be making handicrafts at home. They'll have 3 or 4 different types of things. And as robots and automation are basically making all products really, really efficiently, there's going to be sort of a generic commodity nature to all of that, which will add value to handmade products. And so we hope to be sort of the Etsy of crypto markets in a way, allowing people to basically exchange goods directly through the Divi marketplace. And like in the old days, where there's basically no middleman, you have to realize Divi is not a middleman. It's decentralized. So the listing fees are very, very cheap, and there's no credit card fees to pay. and across borders, especially with digital goods, it's really easy, So if you have to ship something, well, that's still there. But if you don't have to ship, and more and more digital products are becoming of value,
Hmm.
and people are selling services of all different kinds, it's amazing to watch just our fans. They set up a whole section just to talk about what they want to sell in their marketplace, and some of them had never thought that they had anything to sell, or suddenly realized, wow, I could just set myself up as a consultant here and sell my services on the Divi marketplace. They're just very excited to be part of it. So they're coming up with these ideas, and when we first launched, we planned to have something like a Craigslist sort of system where it's very basic. Eventually, we'd like to do something more like Amazon, but that's a big project that has to come down the road. At first, it'll be more like being able to put in your geographic location and find who and what kind of products are near you, and that's something that we can do without too much trouble. So we hope to have that, because a lot of people ask us, well, if I have this Divi, what can I do with it?
Hmm.
Besides putting it in a master node to generate more of it, and perhaps eventually selling, trading it for Bitcoin or going back to dollars, which is not what we want. You need to eventually give people something to do with it, and you will not have mass adoption until people can actually buy goods and services of all different kinds and pay in restaurants with it. So as far as the future goes, a lot is going to have to do with what banks and governments do. And some countries are already sort of acting to ban these because they don't want a decentralized system. They like the way they control things. The rich people that run the banks and run the governments are all the same people. They basically are getting richer and richer all the time
I
on the
think
backs
that
of everybody else.
was, and
Mhm.
you can correct me because you might know it, but I think it was either Thailand or China or someone like that did actually ban cryptocurrency in all forms. Like they gave them like like 4 weeks to unload everything, and then if you were found in possession or trading in cryptocurrency, that was actually going to be a crime, and that
Yeah,
just kind of shows the power of this currency.
I think that's Vietnam.
Yeah,
But
that
the
one.
thing is, it's hard. Governments often don't understand cryptocurrencies at all. For example, in the U.S., they passed a law that said if you had more than $10,000 worth of cryptocurrency coming into the country, you had to tell them. And it's ridiculous because you don't have the cryptocurrency on you. Your wallet is just a tool that looks at the blockchain. So it's like the whole the
And
whole idea is completely absurd.
Yeah, and just real quick, I will say that an article that we were going to cover because it did fit today's theme, but we were not going to be able to get to it because, hey Jeff, news. Yeah, the show's just about over, but we did have a story we were going to cover about Coinbase ordered by a judge to turn over the identities of 14,355 of their traders to the IRS, I assume for tax purposes. Essentially, they want, or the IRS wants to tax cryptocurrency as a form of income. And it's just not that simple. But you can tell traditional governments and traditional currencies are trying to find a way to fit this into the mold when these currencies were designed to not fit into that mold. So it's very interesting.
Exactly.
And I think you have a very interesting project. If people want to find out more, again, we have about a minute here left. If people want to find out more, where can they go and what should they do?
Okay, well, one good thing is to go to our YouTube channel. We have a lot of videos, including one's just about how to use Coinbase. My friend Kelsey, who's one of the Divi team, we did something really interesting where we put her in front of the computer with the video, and she had never used any cryptocurrencies before. So she's an actress, so she goes through and she goes to Coinbase for the first time. She basically documents her journey as a complete and total newbie learning about cryptocurrencies, and her reactions are really quite humorous of sort of the nature of how difficult Coinbase is to work. But at the same time, she explains it really clearly. And so Kelsey's series, I really want to plug that because for newbies, it's really, or anybody, people that are just not familiar with cryptocurrencies, you're really going to learn a lot from her because she's really at your level. You mentioned our website. You can just type Divi Project into Google and you can find us. And we just finished the ICO, so we don't have a lot of information. We're going to be building an entire educational sort of system and making it That's really important. We're going to make it really easy for people. As easy as we are, it's still cryptocurrency, and so we're going to provide a lot of videos and sort of built-in tools into the wallet to help people.
Yeah, and that's definitely what you need. So, and again, check that out. We have a link again at computeramerica.com for today's show. We have a link directly to it. And Geoff, we're just flat out of time. Everyone, one more time, Geoff McCabe. He is the CEO and co-founder of the Divi Project. You can check that out. Geoff, thank you so much. And everyone else out there listening to Computer America, thank you so much. Catch you next time.